Now, the FDA has revoked a national approval for a red dye still sitting in some grocery store freezers right now with a legal reformulation deadline that doesn't hit until January 2027. That means a product can be perfectly legal today and still contain an additive the agency has already determined doesn't belong in the food supply. Americans buy more ice cream per capita than almost any other country on Earth, and most of us are grabbing it off the shelf without ever checking whether what's inside the carton matches what's printed on the outside. Tonight, we're looking at 8 specific American ice cream brands with documented FDA recalls, class action rulings, and labeling violations on record. Not rumors, not TikTok theories, but findings from federal agencies and federal courts. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to check before your next grocery run. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a video like this. Here's why this happens specifically in America. Federal law defines ice cream by a minimum milk fat threshold, 10%, and that single number creates a loophole. Any product below that line has to be called something else, usually frozen dairy dessert, but it can still be packaged, shelved, and priced to look identical to real ice cream. Add to that the FDA's GRAS system, generally recognized as safe, which allows manufacturers to self-certify many additives as safe without a full FDA safety review before they hit the shelf. The FDA doesn't pre-approve every additive before it reaches your freezer. The agency largely acts after a problem is reported or after independent researchers raise a flag. That's the structural gap. A company can be technically compliant and still be selling something a European regulator would have already restricted. The average American shopper isn't reading federal labeling statutes or class action dockets before they buy a pint, and food companies know that. That's what this list is built to fix. Number 8. Klondike, owned by Unilever's now independent Magnum ice cream company. Sold at Walmart, Kroger, Target, and nearly every U.S. grocery chain, Klondike bars are one of the most recognized frozen novelties in the country. Consumer tracking and side-by-side size comparisons circulating widely online show the original Klondike bar, once roughly 5 ounces, now sold at roughly 4 ounces, about a 20% reduction, with the price holding steady or climbing. The company has not issued a public statement confirming or explaining the change, which itself is telling. Shrinkflation isn't illegal in the U.S., and unlike ingredient recalls, there's no FDA requirement to disclose a portion cut as long as the new net weight is accurately printed on the package. The Federal Trade Commission can act on shrinkflation only if it's paired with deliberately deceptive packaging designed to hide the change, and that's a difficult bar to clear in court. If you're buying Klondike bars expecting the same product your parents bought, check the weight in ounces on the box, not just the price, before you decide it's still a deal. Number 7. Enlightened, marketed as a high-protein, lower-calorie alternative, and sold at Target, Walmart, Kroger, and specialty grocers nationwide. In January 2019, a class action was filed against the brand's parent company, Beyond Better Foods, in the Eastern District of New York. According to the complaint, the products replace milk fat, the ingredient that legally defines ice cream, with fat derived from non-dairy sources, which the plaintiffs argued violates the federal requirement that dairy fat be the characterizing ingredient in anything labeled ice cream. The FDA does allow reduced fat, light, or low-fat labeling with some adjustment to composition, but the lawsuit alleged Enlightened went further than that allowance permits. The complaint also challenged the brand's labeling of erythritol as a natural sweetener, arguing the compound used in the product is manufactured through an industrial fermentation process, not simply extracted from nature. Erythritol itself has drawn separate scrutiny. A 2023 study published in Nature Medicine and covered widely by major health institutions found an association with elevated blood erythritol levels in increased risk of heart attack and stroke in study participants. If a product markets itself as the health-conscious choice, check whether natural on the label is doing more marketing work than the ingredient list can support. Number 6. Turkey Hill, the Pennsylvania-based brand sold across Kroger, Giant, Weis, Walmart, and grocery chains up and down the East Coast. In 2019, Turkey Hill's parent company faced a class action alleging that roughly half its vanilla product line was mislabeled. The suit claimed the ice cream used vanilla flavoring not derived primarily from vanilla beans, while still being marketed simply as vanilla, rather than vanilla-flavored. Separately, in April 2022, the FDA announced a recall after a consumer discovered that containers labeled chocolate marshmallow premium ice cream had actually been filled with chocolate peanut butter cup ice cream during production, a mix-up that put anyone with a peanut allergy at real risk of a life-threatening reaction. It wasn't Turkey Hill's first packaging mix-up recall either. A nearly identical labeling error involving undeclared almonds and eggs had already prompted an FDA recall years earlier. Two allergen mix-ups from the same manufacturer isn't a coincidence. It points to a quality control gap in how flavors are filled and packaged on the line. Number 5. Dreyer's, sold as Dreyer's west of the Rockies and Eddie's everywhere else, owned by Nestle. Multiple Dreyer's and Eddie's vanilla products are now labeled frozen dairy dessert rather than ice cream, meaning they fall short of the FDA's milk fat threshold. A 2019 class action filed in federal court alleged that the brand's vanilla products used vanillin sourced from non-vanilla origins, while the label simply read vanilla, and separately claimed the products used annatto, a coloring additive, to mimic the visual appearance of ice cream made with real vanilla beans. The same lawsuit alleged the fresh milk and cream language on the package was misleading, given that the products carry a shelf life of months due to preservation processing. Nestle has stated publicly it stands behind the safety of its frozen dairy dessert products, but the labeling questions raised in the suit are worth understanding before you buy the brown and blue container, assuming it's the same formula it's always been.
If you're realizing your own freezer might have some of these sitting in it right now, subscribe. We expose exactly this kind of thing every single week. Number 4. Hershey's ice cream. And number 3, Jeni Splendid ice creams, both caught in the same FDA action. In June 2024, the FDA expanded a nationwide recall tied to Totally Cool Inc., a Maryland manufacturing facility, ultimately covering more than 70 products across 13 brands after testing revealed potential Listeria monocytogenes contamination. Hershey's ice cream products pulled from shelves included vanilla and chocolate ice cream cakes and cookies and cream ice cream sandwiches and cones, sold widely at Walmart, Kroger, and Dollar General. Jeni Splendid Ice Creams, a brand that markets itself on premium small batch positioning and is sold at Whole Foods, Target, and its own scoop shops, had multiple ice cream sandwich flavors swept into the same recall. Listeria is particularly dangerous for pregnant women, older adults, and anyone immunocompromised, and can cause miscarriage, stillbirth, or life-threatening infection. What makes this recall notable isn't just its size, it's that two brands marketed at completely different price points and completely different premium positioning were both manufactured through the same third-party facility with the same contamination risk. A higher price tag doesn't guarantee a different supply chain. Number 2. Tillamook, the Oregon-based dairy cooperative, sold at Kroger, Safeway, Whole Foods, and Target, built almost entirely on a brand identity of small family farms and pasture-raised cows. In 2019, the Animal Legal Defense Fund filed a class action in Multnomah County Circuit Court on behalf of Oregon consumers, alleging that Tillamook's marketing, imagery of cows grazing on coastal pasture, language about honoring small farmer owners, misrepresented where the majority of its milk actually comes from. According to the complaint, up to 80% of Tillamook's milk supply was sourced from 3 Mile Canyon Farms, one of the largest dairy feedlot operations in the country, housing tens of thousands of cows on a concentrated animal feeding operation in the high desert of eastern Oregon, rather than the coastal pastures depicted in the company's advertising. Tillamook has stated it holds every supplying farm, regardless of size, to the same welfare and quality standards. Whatever the ultimate legal outcome, the case is a useful reminder that family farm branding on a dairy label isn't independently verified by any single U.S. regulator. It's a marketing claim, not a certification.
1.
Kirkland Signature, Costco's private label, sold exclusively to its more than 76 million U.S. members. A 2021 class action filed in the Northern District of Illinois targeted Kirkland Signature chocolate almond-dipped vanilla ice cream bars, alleging the packaging's imagery of chunky chocolate and a milk chocolate description misled buyers about what was actually coating the bar. According to the complaint, the coating was made primarily from vegetable oils, including coconut and soybean oil, rather than the cocoa butter-based milk chocolate the imagery implied. A nearly identical suit was filed the same week against Nestlé's Häagen-Dazs bars for the same alleged issue. Both cases were ultimately dismissed by the court, which found the packaging wasn't legally ambiguous about the presence of vegetable oil once the full label was considered. Reasonable people can and did disagree. So what do you actually do with all of this? Start by flipping the carton over before you flip it into your cart. If the front says ice cream, but the ingredient panel lists vegetable oil, palm kernel oil, or coconut oil ahead of cream, or if the package says frozen dairy dessert outright, you're not getting what you think you're paying for. Look for a short ingredient list. Cream, milk, sugar, and a named flavor source is what real ice cream looks like. A dozen gums, stabilizers, and unspecified natural flavor is a sign of a reformulated product built for shelf life and cost, not quality. Watch specifically for erythritol, given the cardiovascular research linking it to elevated risk, and for FDC Red 3, which the FDA has already revoked, but which remains legally sellable in existing inventory until January 2027. The Environmental Working Group's Food Scores database is a free tool you can search by product name before you shop, and it flags additives by concern level using the same peer-reviewed research referenced in this video. For a genuinely shorter ingredient list, Häagen-Dazs's original line and Tillamook's classic tub, despite the sourcing questions above, both still clear the FDA's ice cream threshold with fewer additives than most of the brands on this list. Trader Joe's private label ice cream line is also worth a look. It isn't immune to industry-wide sourcing questions, but its core pints consistently list cream, milk, and sugar ahead of stabilizers. None of this is a coincidence, and none of it is unique to ice cream. It's what happens when a federal agency relies on a self-certification system for additive safety, defines a product by a single fat percentage instead of overall ingredient quality, and only steps in after contamination, a lawsuit, or independent research forces the issue. The FDA does act. The Red 3 revocation and the Totally Cool recall prove that, but it acts downstream of the problem, not ahead of it. Beyond switching brands, you can actually report a suspected labeling violation directly to the FDA through its MedWatch and Consumer Complaint Portal, and you can check any product against the EWG database before you buy it instead of after. Read the label. Check the weight, because that red dye sitting in some manufacturer's supply room right now isn't illegal yet, and until 2027, legal and safe aren't the same word. If this changed how you shop, the next video will change what you thought you knew about what's actually in your protein bar.